the risk with being the pioneer, being out in front is that you're going to make a lot of mistakes. Mm-hmm. So you have to choose very carefully about when you're going to take that position, when you are going to drive the bleeding edge, and how do you understand what the impacts of that are going to be. But you have to have an appetite for risk associated with it as well.
Welcome to the Thrive Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Potter, and I'm dedicated to helping founders and tech entrepreneurs find a path to success. Let's dive into that success blueprint right now. Pete, could you kick things off by sharing a bit about your background and your role in shaping products as CEO of your business?
Yeah, sure. I think my position as a CEO at DataCapable is relatively unique because my background is engineering. My first internship in college was at the local utility in Rhode Island, Narragansett Electric, and grew up with computers, went to school for computer engineering, but fell in love with development in software engineering. So after college, spent a few years in the Department of Defense, then at Intuit with financial software, and all of that combined has prepared me for helping utilities solve their needs and providing innovative solutions and products to them.
Terrific. Kevin, as Chief Operating Officer of DataCapable, how do you prioritize features and changes in product development based on the rapidly evolving tech market?
Yeah, so I think if the last couple of years have taught us nothing else, it's that we're living in a very dynamic world, and we're living in a very unpredictable world. Mm-hmm. I come from a place where we thought about strategy over 2, 4, 6, 10-year periods, and in the tech world, there's no place for that. And that was a big change for me coming from my career into a tech company. And I had the opportunity to spend a couple of years thinking about strategy in general in my organization that I was in. And a quick realization for me was that my framework for strategic thinking did not fit in this world. And with that, we have thought about and built out a strategic framework that's based on flexibility. And it's about recursive thinking, visiting, revisiting, measuring, understanding, and jumping back, and making sure that we have a continuous improvement process. So how we apply that to product is, we try to plan how we do product in 2-week sprints. And those 2-week sprints, while we're always trying to look at what the next 2 months, 4 months are for those sprints, we have agility in that process so that as we learn new information, as new information comes to light, we're positioned such that we can capture that opportunity as that opportunity is presented to us. So, when we think about how we're prioritizing those features, it's a confluence of a bunch of different items. There is the customer feedback. Mm-hmm. Absolutely, customer feedback is key to every decision we make about features and products. And then there's the long-term vision for the company. So how do features and products get prioritized within that framework of the long-term vision for the company? And then finally, I think the last key piece of that for us is trying to understand what's happening in the world around us, right? So, and when I say the world around us, I don't take a view of just the vertical we're in and the verticals we're serving, because a lot of these problems are similar in a lot of different areas and a lot of different verticals. So if we don't have to come up with something from scratch, let's borrow from what's happening in other industries, because I think the luxury we have with the industries we serve is they are typically fast followers. So whatever the emerging trends that we're seeing elsewhere, we have a little bit of time to react to that. Not every tech business has that opportunity, though. So that's a place I think we're fortunate in the verticals we're in.
Yeah, I would agree that feedback from customers is gold. And whether it's clients, and especially even potential clients.
One other really good point that Kevin mentioned that he brings to the table that I love is that structure and process that a big organization needs and depends on to a smaller agile company. We do need structure and process and more of it as we grow. And he's brought this like dynamic structure to the team.
That's fantastic. In terms of that structure, again, feedback from customers, as you said, is key. But how do you go about looking at your competition to determine what they're doing or where they're behind or where you can cause your products to stand out?
Yeah, I think we have a luxury in the verticals that we operate in that our clients aren't looking to be on the bleeding edge. They want to be on the cutting edge. They want to be pushing boundaries, but the risk tolerance for those businesses is lower than it is in some other industries. So, the dynamics aren't quite as dynamic in the industry we're in, and we bring that very much like tech industry background and focus to it, and that gives us a strategic advantage. I think a lot of companies, they find the product market fit, it's working, and they allow it to stagnate. And we never have a second where we're allowing anything to stagnate in our business. And inherently, because of that, I think we have an advantage. I think the other advantage we have in the industry we're in is it's pretty copycat. So, if one utility does it, a lot of other utilities are going to follow suit just naturally based on the business. But the other component of that is we're not in an industry where our customers are competing against each other.
Right.
And that's a huge difference. So that gives us a strategic advantage in understanding our competition because information is shared very widely and very openly. So we don't have to dig quite as much as you do in other places, but we can never take our eye off from that ball because as soon as we take our eye off from that ball, we're now in a position to react, and we always want to be in a position where we're thinking proactively, we're thinking about our product strategy proactively, and we're not having to react. We're having the advantage of saying, we can see this coming, we can get ahead of it. And again, going back to that strategic framework of flexibility, that allows us to adjust and stay ahead and course correct along the way.
And learning from our customers too is a big point. And I read a story recently about Whoop, this Whoop band. One of their strategies to advertising was watching their competitors and learning from their mistakes and competing against them in those areas. And I see it similar for us where we see what they're up to, what they do wrong, and we do better and really hone in on those things.
It's terrific. I know that DataCapable's mission is to serve utility clients. Pete, with a constant influx of new tech products, how do you ensure that yours not only stands out, but also meets the client's genuine needs?
Yeah, there's a couple of things there. With my engineering background and how many years now? 20 years experience, I've seen technologies come and go. And in my earlier career, I'd see these technologies come and think this is the next wave. Like we got to get on this. And I've realized they come and go over time. And there's some that stick around, but it's more like the general concepts. So we're not always chasing the latest and greatest technology unless it makes sense for us in that case. And we're also dedicating time for our technical debt. So if you don't clean up that technical debt as your product is growing, it becomes such a burden, you'll never get to it. And then 5 years later, you have a clunky software suite that you just can't maintain, doesn't work well, really buggy. So you really got to stay on top of that.
And I would just add, we've hit on a really key point here, and that is our customers have to be a guiding piece of our business. And you hear that a lot, right? You hear you have to listen to your customers. You have to follow your customers. I think one of the things that we've done different than that has served us very well is, again, I talked about looking at other industries. in this case, there is a concept called design thinking. Design thinking is a human-centered design process, and we've brought that human elements of that human-centered design process into our business. So when we think about how we're getting information from our customers, step one is listening, right? But there's a difference between listening and hearing. So it's absolutely critical that we're not just listening, we're hearing. And then one of the concepts of design thinking that I have just appreciated so much is they then take that hearing to the next level, and it's about empathy. So we want to be in a position where we can empathize with our customers. What does that mean? It means you truly have to understand their problems, their challenges, their issues. And one of the strategic decisions that we've made in order to be able to do that is we've brought talent into the business that has sat in the seats of our customers, have faced those challenges from inside of the business. And that's a perspective that you can't get without having time in those seats.
I think that's incredibly valuable. I mean, you yourself have spent a lot of time working in the utility industry, and so has Katie. Can you describe, how that separates, from, I'm sure that you guys do data-driven decision-making. You're very focused on that, and that's your compass. But combining that data-driven decision-making along with that utility experience, what kind of advantages does that give to you versus some of the competition?
Yeah, I think the first advantage there is our ability to anticipate. Mm-hmm. We can anticipate where the challenges are going to be in the sales cycle. We can anticipate, what the pressures are that they're feeling, that our sponsor is feeling from their executive team, from their board of directors, from the regulator. We've all been faced with those challenges, or Katie and I at least have been faced with those challenges from inside the business. So we can anticipate where the sticking points are going to be along in the process. And we also know what those conversations have to look like in order for them to be successful in the business. So we're trying from early on in the sales cycle to apply our experience to that process and help them anticipate some of the challenges they're going to have in pushing that product through their own internal sales cycle.
That's invaluable. We often emphasize, well, you folks had just said that you focus listening to the client. From your experiences, can you give me an example of how client feedback directly impacted one of your product directions or designs?
Yeah. So you touched a little bit on that data-driven approach. So one of the things that we try to do is we get a piece of feedback from a client. We then take that feedback and we socialize it across our client base so that we can understand exactly how the concern, the problem, the challenge that they're facing applies across the entire customer base and more broadly across the potential client base. So an example of where we've done that in the past, for example, planned outages. Planned outages at a high level is basically the utility knows some of the outages are coming, right? So they have maintenance that they have to do. We had a client say, the dynamics of the world we operate in are starting to change. COVID. Planned outages historically have always happened during the working hours. Why? Because people are out of their home. It's less impactful to people. That dynamic changed drastically in COVID, during COVID, because the majority of people are now working from home. That planned outage that was at 2:00 that didn't interrupt or impact anything too significant, we now just dropped 500 people that are in the middle of a meeting, right? And you want to talk about frustrated. They find out that the utility knew that they were going to have the outage and didn't inform them, right? So we got into this conversation with the utility. How do we distinguish and make this different from the existing customer journey that is the reactive outages that are happening? And how do we help them communicate that message to their customers so that the customers are at least in a position where they're empowered to take control of that situation? They know they need to be somewhere else for that meeting that's going to happen. That's a perfect example of where customer feedback was brought in. We socialized it broadly. We recognized that this isn't a single problem that's occurring for a single utility, but this is an industry issue that hasn't been solved and hasn't even really been contemplated. So we have built out an entire strategy around how do we distinguish between your typical outage and your planned outage? How do we help customers understand that? How do we help shape the behavior of the customer where they're going to the outage map when they have impacts? Well, now they have an opportunity to get information and be communicated to more proactively. And that's a huge shift in the industry, right? Everything traditionally in this area has been reactive. Now you have an opportunity to be proactive. You have an opportunity to shape the message with the customer, and you have the opportunity to improve the experience on whole.
Yeah, and if I could add to that. So our mission is delivering situational awareness, and I've got a distinct memory of the early days of DataCapable. The first time I saw what you mentioned, like that communication, providing that information to the utility customers really resonated with one of our customers. There was a snowstorm, and their customers were upset because their power is out, and they don't understand why. Call angrily, submitting complaints like, fix this, what's going on? We gave them the ability to share more information, which was at the time a photo of a lineman in a bucket truck during the snow. And that completely like switched the conversation. It turned it to, thank you so much. We really appreciate you. And having that real-time information was a game changer.
Great. You know, throughout my career, I've encountered unexpected aha moments that changed everything. The entire direction of the company. Pete and Kevin, you know, I'm assuming you've had similar experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. I can take the first swing at this one.
Okay.
So we always thought about the outage and event map as being a customer communication channel, and we designed and thought about everything around the outage map from a customer perspective. I got into a conversation with a customer, and the customer didn't realize how much of an internal tool it was, and we had no idea how much of an internal tool it was, how much their operations and their restoration efforts were being driven off from the outage map. And for me, it was a huge aha moment for me, because I had the experience of all the systems that were being used inside the utility to manage these types of situations. I never connected the fact that there was a gap in visualization and understanding for the internal employees. And as a result of that aha moment, where this isn't just a customer communication tool, this is an operational management tool, was a big swing for us in thinking, in that when we now don't just need to focus on and drive this product through the customer channels of the business, but this has real operational value. That means we have a whole new channel to sell into, and we've developed a whole strategy around how the outage of an event map can be both an external facing tool, but also an internal management tool. And one of the big gaps is the executives don't have the level of information and knowledge that they need to manage the external factors in the business during these large storm events. We're now empowering these executives with management dashboards, with storm curves that are happening, because we have all the data and we have expertise in visualization. It's not a big pivot for us. It's changing, slight changes in how we do it, while creating a whole lot of new opportunity around it.
Terrific.
An aha moment that happened for me, I would say it took a long time. It wasn't just like one light bulb. It was a light bulb turning on slowly over time. But in the early days, we were bootstrapped. So we were really dependent on what our customers asked for and needed and wanted to provide it to them as is. Over time, we really honed in on what is the value that we're providing and what is our mission. Once we locked in on our mission and our vision, all the features since then have been, does this align with the mission and vision? And if it doesn't, then we say no. And if we don't do that, or if you don't do that when you're creating a product, you could end up all over the place. So every feature, every capability has to hone in with our mission as it is today, but that mission should continue to change over time.
Terrific. Having spoken to some of your clients, I know how much I know how satisfied they are with your products and your service. And I know that that's a direct result of your prioritization on making sure that you meet present day client requirements. But Pete, in our tech-driven world, innovate or die is a common mantra. How do you balance innovation with meeting clients' present day needs?
I think there is that mantra of innovate or die, because companies like DataCapable will come after you because we're innovative to our core. Like, it's part of who we are as a team. And other solutions that may be older or not innovative will catch up quickly. And it's kind of a mindset and way of thinking at the deepest level.
Well, and I think some of what's driven out of that innovator or die concept is innovation needs to be this thing that stands on its own. And I think there's a real mistake in thinking about innovation as innovating for the sake of innovating, right?
Correct.
So the key is to build innovation in at the core. It's a guiding principle for us. It's a core of what we do. So innovation isn't, on the side of people's desk. Innovation is a core requirement to live and breathe and exist in our business.
And it doesn't always need to be some crazy innovation like the iPod. And I'm thinking of this because Apple announced the new iPhone. One of the innovative features is USB-C, and they make it seem like it's this crazy new technology, which it's not, and that's okay. Like every innovation or everything new doesn't have to be this like mind-blowing technology, but even these little innovative steps, even maybe internally that nobody sees, are a step in the right direction.
Well, and I think there's a real misconception in the industry that these giant tech companies are just so innovative. The reality is, if you scratch below the surface just a little bit, you'll realize that most of the big giants out there, the Apples, the Googles, they're not really innovating, and they're not really, coming up with these big, great, new, game-changing ideas. Their strategy really has been fast following. So they wait, they let somebody create the space, and then they build it a heck of a lot better than the competition and swallow them up.
That's a great point. In the utility industry, do you find that when you're thinking about innovation, is that in response to customer feedback, or are you trying to drive change? Bring them something that they haven't seen before but they need. How do you describe that difference?
Yeah, go for it.
It's mostly anticipating the need for change, like anticipating the end user or customer's needs before they ask for it. And part of that is staying on top of the trends in technology and in the industry, and the needs of individuals. In today, a big demand from customer or utility customers to the utility is digital access to things, and not necessarily subscribing to stuff or looking for information. Just give me the information I need when I need it. And there's expectations like that because companies like Google give you access to so much.
And this is why it's so keenly important to not just focus on the vertical that you're in, because customers are getting an experience every day from every industry, every person they're interacting with. Amazon has created this whole new concept of what customer experience is, what timeliness is.
Yeah, and that becomes the standard, which is next day, here's my stuff.
Exactly.
Or same day.
Same day. Yes.
And that becomes the expectation. So look to see what's happening out elsewhere outside of the verticals and industries you're operating in, because there's almost always indicators that this is going to be hitting you, your customers, in the not too distant future.
My time at Message Broadcast is a testament to that. We were the utility industry is our current industry that our primary focus is on. But before that, we had almost a decade of experience in every other industry, from banking, telecom, retail, healthcare. And what we realized, excuse me, is that as consumers, we consume from all industries. And so that was a little late coming to the utility industry, that until it was mandated that they would focus on customer satisfaction. So when we came in with zero utility experience, but we took the industry by storm. In fact, some of the best feedback that we got from the largest enterprise utility clients is, we don't care that you don't have experience. The people that are in the utility space don't understand customer engagement communications. We want to know what the largest telecom, the largest retailers, because those are our consumers. Yeah. And so what we took from a learning of knowing, it wasn't the science of messaging, it was the art of influencing behavior. And I've really seen how your products influence behavior, especially your outage map, really helps consumers be able to do that. Pete, considering the numerous tech products that are emerging, both of you, how do you both decide on which innovative features to introduce, or like Apple, refine?
One thing I wanted to mention was we design with the user experience top of mind. So we want to provide the most intuitive software with the best experience that delivers the value and meets the need that they have. And it's easy to fall into the trap of making the UI look pretty when that's not necessarily user intuitive. And I always think about Instagram, at least in the early days. Instagram, although it's a pretty simple concept, sharing photos, there's not a whole lot of features in there, but it does everything you need to. And like I mentioned earlier, it's difficult to narrow in on what features should you add and not add. But listening to your customers, making sure it aligns with your mission and vision, and keeping the end user in mind to avoid those things you're adding because you think it's cool or looks nice, but it doesn't really accomplish what it should.
For the benefit of our audience that isn't in the utility industry, when you say user, are you talking about the utility or the utility's customer?
It does get a little tricky with us because our customer is always the utility, but for some of the products like Outage and Event Map, the user may be the utility's customer. So it's the customer's customer, and we need to keep both customers' needs in mind, which presents another challenge.
Well, how do you, obviously it's easy to talk to enterprise level utility companies and the executives that are responsible for those customers. But do you, from a data-driven decision-making, from a research standpoint, how does DataCapable go about understanding the needs of the consumer?
Yeah, you want to touch on that?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in there. So one of the things that there is a wealth of data in our industry is customer surveying. There's lots and lots of customer survey data out there. And as a proxy for not having that direct interaction with the customers, we try to get our hands on the specific information for each of our clients and our prospects. And that gives us some of those insights. And then whenever afforded the opportunity, we try to have conversations with not just our sponsor in the business. The sponsor is, the most well-informed person that we probably interact with, but that doesn't mean that the frontline folks don't have a ton of insight and value. So if you can the closer you can get to the source, the more accurate information you have, and the more informed decisions that you can make. I think the other challenge of being in the tech industry is it tends to be everything that looks shiny is gold. And that is almost never the case. Mm-hmm. So there is opportunity abound everywhere around us. Now, the question is, how do we filter that down to what are the right opportunities for us that will ultimately create value for our customers? And if we can't answer the question of what is ultimately of value to the customer, then we can't convince ourselves that this should be a priority for the business.
That's a great lead into my next question for you, Kevin. How do you weigh the importance of pioneering experimentation against traditional market research in your product development?
Yeah, I think, pioneering experimentation has a different meaning to, everybody you ask. It's just like strategy. You ask the question of what strategy is, you can get 20 different definitions. So we are certainly doing a lot of pioneering. We're doing a lot of innovation that's tied to what the customer is driving. But again, I know I keep circling back around to this point, but we're also looking to see what's emerging elsewhere that we can bring in. So the risk with being the pioneer, being out in front is that you're going to make a lot of mistakes. Mm-hmm. So you have to choose very carefully about when you're going to take that position, when you are going to drive the bleeding edge, and how do you understand what the impacts of that are going to be. But you have to have an appetite for risk associated with it as well, because it's much more risky. So there are times that we really drive towards that bleeding edge, but we're often trying to inform that bleeding edge with what the bleeding edge is elsewhere.
And it's really important to, I always think of the lean startup process to create minimum viable product. In other words, don't spend too much time obsessing in waiting for it to be perfect. Create a new feature, test it right away. If it doesn't work, drop it or improve it. Don't dedicate months and months and months to something you don't know if it's going to work.
Right. Well, Pete, rapid tech changes can both benefit and challenge, your organization. How do these shifts affect product strategy at your company, especially when looking at long-term goals?
Yeah, one of the hot topics now is ChatGPT and AI. Mm-hmm. Although it's a hot topic, it's been a trend in technology that's been growing for years. And we have some patented AI algorithms that patented years ago. So although ChatGPT is now all the buzz and we hear customers say, we need this, we want this, we've been using similar technology and improving it with the advancements that we have now that have brought ChatGPT. And so because we're always looking at things in an innovative way, staying ahead of the curve, we're already doing it. And I think if you're trying to jump on these new trends, if it's a trend, you're a little late to just jump on it.
Well, we're living in a world that's driven on headlines and bullet points, and if that's as far as you're digging when you're making decisions, you're falling into traps. AI is a buzz. It's everywhere. It's revolutionary. It's going to change everything. I don't disagree with any of those statements, but you have to, as a business, make decisions on when it makes sense for you and when it's going to make sense ultimately for your customers, and it's going to drive value.
Let me shift you a little bit. You use AI algorithms in your products such as Threat Detector. Can you tell the audience a little bit about why that's essential? Yes, AI is a buzzword and it's a hot topic now, but you guys were using AI years ago, long before ChatGPT. And based on the volume of data that you have to analyze and turn into actionable information, tell the audience a little bit about how you're driving that level of innovation, using that to turn that raw data into something that's useful.
Yeah, so I think any time that there is massive volumes of data, there's rapid change in the data that's coming at you, that's a perfect application for AI. What we do there isn't a brute force option to it to do it well. That being said, what we've learned throughout this process is that AI is imperfect, just like humans are imperfect. Ultimately, AI was built, designed by humans. There are human bias built into those programs as they're developed. And if you aren't taking the time to understand what those bias are and how those bias potentially impact the outcome, it's going to catch up with you and bite you eventually. So, when we started out, when we created Threat Detector early on, the model we had in our heads was that this can be completely done by AI. And then we sent a client an alert for an active shooter in Nakatomi Plaza in LA on Christmas Eve. So if you know the reference, it's a Die Hard reference.
Yes.
The AI did everything it was supposed to do, except it wasn't as intelligent as it needed to be to make sure that we were sending real, active, real-time situations to our clients.
That's fascinating. That's one of the things that when I learned about Threat Detector, that one of the things you emphasized, Pete, was we keep a human in the loop for relevance. And that's a great example of, and humorous too, of that relevance. Can you tell me how you came to that conclusion? I mean, short of that example, to keeping a human in the loop.
Yeah, so we see AI as a way for humans to do more. And with the algorithms we have in place gives our team more bandwidth to do what they're experienced and experts at doing, like analyzing things. And that's the value prop to our customers as well. Like, spend less time focusing on these things. We can do that for you. Spend more time on what you're trained to do and you're an expert in. And AI is all about doing more with the team you have.
And there's inherent distrust in AI, where in the current state of it, right? So we recognize that from early on, and I think part of that inherent distrust was what drove us to make sure that we kept a human in the loop, but that continues to be validated on a day-to-day basis.
The Threat Detector product is used to keep crews for our utility clients safe. And so from that standpoint, can you give me a real-world example of feedback from the clients where this played a strategic role in keeping those crews safe from critical events such as weather or whatnot?
Yeah, there are a lot of different forces that result in critical events. There's human-driven, there's natural disaster-driven, but active shooter is always a use case that resonates. And I was very fortunate to be sitting in the operations center of one of our clients when my phone buzzed, the VP that was sitting next to me's phone buzzed, and there was an active shooter in their service territory, which he immediately jumped on the phone with his operations and dispatch and made sure that they were aware of that. And as a result of that, their crew wasn't in the direct line of fire, but they were able to then redispatch that crew, move them out of that area, and ensure that they were safe.
Well, I sure wish I had a Threat Detector available to me. We were visiting a major new client in one of our major cities, and we walked into the lobby, and the activity in the lobby was very unusual. Security was running around, and it turned out that right next door was a bank, and we walked into the middle of an armed robbery.
Wow!
So I wish I had your product then. To wrap things up, how do you both envision the role of continuous product innovation in ensuring that DataCapable success in the coming years?
Yeah, there's a few pieces to it, and with the development team, it's important to plan the future. And if you're not planning your roadmap and don't have a good grasp on that, you can get stuck in this loop of just doing tasks as they come up. That's something we've been improving with over time, but we have a roadmap, and so we're planning for the future. And Kevin and I are planning beyond that roadmap as well. So part of that roadmap is also the tech debt I mentioned. So you need to dedicate a portion to maintaining that tech debt so you don't get wrapped up in that. But planning out the roadmap ahead and having that strategy and vision even beyond that roadmap. So 5 years, 8 years from now, it's not in our roadmap, but it's things we're thinking about, and we'll get in the roadmap as soon as we think it's ready.
That's key to sustaining your growth and your future. You know, it sounds like it's not a top-down mandate. I imagine that, some of the game-changing innovation has come from all staff members because they're interacting with your clients.
Yeah, it's absolutely not a top-down mandate, and we have flipped that model completely on its head. It's not about top-down, it's about bottom-up. Create the expectation that as part of your job, we expect you to be thinking creatively. We expect you to be thinking differently. We expect you to be asking questions. We expect you to question us. That makes everything better if you can do that. We're only two people, right? And we can only do so much. But if we can leverage the collective power of the entire company and make sure that they understand innovation is core to who we are, that is when the magic happens.
Yeah, that's great that you don't hesitate to pivot when emerging trends are affecting your clients, and you can be very proactive in supporting them.
And the key to being able to pivot is like what Pete was saying. What are the barriers, or what are the potential barriers for us in being able to make that quick pivot? It's easy to ignore something like tech debt, but that tech debt is absolutely going to end up being one of the stifling forces for innovation. It might not be tomorrow, it might not be 2 weeks from now, but it's going to rear its head 6 months from now, a year from now.
Well, thank you. Thank you both. And thank you for turning in and watching Thrive Podcast. If this episode added value to your journey, please share, subscribe, leave us a review. And to all the tech founders and entrepreneurs out there, please visit us at thriveadvisors.com. Remember, most businesses do reach a point of stagnation, and we at Thrive Advisors work with our clients to set forth a plan of action to growing revenue toward a profitable exit. So thanks again for joining us.
Thanks for having us, Bill.